Well, welcome everyone and good afternoon. Good morning to some of you who are on the West Coast, and welcome to the Volunteer and Faith-Based Learning Collaborative. I'm Jill Kagan, Director of the Arch National Respite Network and Resource Center. For those of you who might be new to the Learning Collaborative, it's really meant to serve as a community of practice for our respite network. And traditionally, or more usually, the Learning Collaboratives are made up of our lifespan respite grantees and state respite coalitions and partners. But for this particular collaborative, we've opened it up a little bit more to our broader respite network so that they can join us and we can take full advantage of all the experience that's out there around volunteer and faith-based respite. Okay, I'm going to share my screen because I do have some slides here. Can you all see those?
I can.
Okay, great. Excellent. If you would all, let's start off by putting your names in the chat for me, but also please put your agency and what state you're from. And we'd like to welcome those of you who are new to our Learning Collaborative and maybe even new to Arch. And if you want to also add in the chat what you're hoping to get out of participation in the Learning Collaborative today, that'll be very helpful as we move forward with topics in the future. Before I turn it over, we have a really fantastic program for you today. But before we get started, I just have a few very important announcements. For those of you who are part of our network, it's probably nothing new to you, but I really just want to emphasize what we've got going on right now. We do have our National Lifespan Respite Conference scheduled for September 13th through 15th in Madison, Wisconsin. Right now, even though the pandemic is ongoing, we are planning to hold it in person. If things should change, we are prepared to pivot to a virtual conference. So I would all encourage you to think about submitting a presentation proposal. I mean, the call for presentations is open right now. The deadline to submit is March 1st. It's coming up pretty soon. It's only about 3 weeks away. The theme for the conference is Reimagine Respite as we emerge from the pandemic. So many of us realize that during the pandemic, we were able to make significant changes in how we think about and provide respite, making them more flexible and more person and family centered, expanding the respite model to include broader supports. And this really has, while there were certainly tragedies throughout the pandemic, it raised awareness about family caregiving and really gave us an opportunity to redefine respite moving forward. And we want to capture that. We want to capture what worked during the pandemic and what continues to work and benefit family caregivers and those they're caring for. So please think about submitting a call for presentations. And the link to access the application and the call you can find on this slide on the screen. We also, for those of you who are grantees and partners, I want to alert you to the fact that we will be having our grantee meeting or learning symposium the day before the conference. Again, right now, scheduled for in-person September 13th. So put that date on your calendars. We'll be working on the agenda over the next couple of months. And if any of you have thoughts or ideas about what hot topics you really want us to cover, please feel free to let me know. And then finally, we're really excited about our 4th year of our innovative and exemplary respite services initiative. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. We're seeking innovative and exemplary respite services from across the country. And in this effort, we're really looking for well-established respite services that are evidence-based or evidence-informed, that appear promising, or they're trying new service models, or targeting especially hard to reach populations. A further criteria is that we do expect programs to have some preliminary data or a plan to collect data that can demonstrate benefits to caregivers, the people they're caring for, and or their entire family system. And of course, we're looking for programs that demonstrate innovation. The goal for us is to have a database of such services that we can share with all of you who may be looking for services worthy of replication. We're doing it to help build the evidence base for respite and encourage funders to look our way. And we do it also to help you improve and build on the quality of the services you already provide. To date, we've identified about 30 respite services that have met our fairly stringent criteria for selection. And a number of them are volunteer and are faith-based. And if you want to read more about each of these models, please visit the link that you see in that third bullet. The application to be recognized as an innovative and exemplary respite service is now open. And we strongly encourage you to submit an application for your volunteer or for faith-based service if it's been around for at least 3 years and meet our other selection criteria, which you can also find at that link on the Arch website. The deadline to submit for this application is March 15th. And I'm happy to announce that there will be an information session just to walk you through the application because it can be a little intimidating. It's not as intimidating as it looks. To walk you through that application and answer any questions. And that information will be held on February 28th at 3 p.m. And the link to register in advance for that session is also at the link for innovative and exemplary services. If you have any questions, we're not going to take questions on any of this right now, but if you have them, please feel free to put your question in the chat and I will respond to them during the presentation. As I was saying, we have a really exciting, I'm really excited about this presentation for you today from our very own Doris Green from the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition. During our last Learning Collaborative call back in the fall, she mentioned a Respite Revival that they held last summer, and many of you wanted to hear more about that. So Doris graciously agreed to share information about that and about their volunteer and faith-based respite work in New York State. Doris has worked closely for a number of years with our other very special guest, Daphne Johnston, who was the featured guest at that New York Respite Revival, but she's done so much more across the country. Some of you may have had the opportunity to hear from Daphne at the 2017 National Lifespan Respite Conference in Alabama, and I'm so glad to welcome her back today. Daphne is the founder and director of the Respite Ministry at First United Methodist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, and founder and CEO of the Respite for All Foundation. I'm very eager for you all to learn more about her work. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Doris, and to Daphne.
Thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to partner with Daphne on doing anything. So I just wanted to, give you a little bit of background about Daphne's relationship with New York State. And it truly did start when I heard her on an Arch call when I first took over the coalition here in New York State. And I got off the webinar and called Daphne directly. And I said, we have to work together. And we brought her to our annual conference. And that is where our friendship and all our work in respite began all those years ago, I think 6 or 7 years ago. Can you do the next slide, Jill? So I want to play this video, and I don't know if Daphne will want to shoot me, but it really does encompass where her work started and what it all really means to her. So Jill, if we could just start with this video.
Hey, Doris, can I say one thing?
No.
Please, just before this video, 1 minute. You better pause it. This video, I've got so much pride in because you literally cannot tell who's living with Alzheimer's and who is not. You'll notice Bobby is a volunteer that's featured. She's living with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, but the beauty and what I want you to watch for is that everybody's living with something and there's no label. So carry on, Doris.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to see you. Man, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
These are the people that have built your church.
Oh, no.
They're the pillars of your community. They have given their time, talent, and treasure. And now, when they need you the most, what has your church got for them as a ministry? My name is Daphne Johnston, and I'm the Executive Director of the Respite Ministry at First United Methodist Church in Montgomery, Alabama.
When I was young, I guess, if you had dementia, you just sort of went on the back porch and rocked. We have so much to give, and we are still very vital to ourselves, our families, our community.
Everything we do, we try to have purpose. I want us at each table to come up with 15 ways that we can help our neighbor. We do art, we do music, we do pet therapy, we do weight training, we do yoga, we do chapel services through the month. We need to do projects that lift people up. So we do these things together to send to the hospital, to send to the nursing home, to send to shut-ins. We travel all over the city to sing in different places, and then they have a final concert to put on for the community. I think my group thinks they're the Rockettes.
There's so many things that we can do and help anybody that will let us help them.
I do want to be there for anybody that needs me.
That I go home and I feel so different than when I came.
The twinkle in everybody's eye, the joy that I see God when I am here. I see Him in every face I look into.
With the disease comes isolation. We realized that they didn't even have an opportunity to still be a part of a spiritual community. I am a God of plenty. I never run out of good things. And so when someone can't remember their loved one's name anymore, or they might not be able to remember how many grandchildren they have, but they know they've got an internal need to pray for their family. It's in us, and we need an outlet to be able to pray together. The ministry has spread. We've helped 4 or 5 other programs get up and running, and 2 or 3 in the cooker, and they're all based in the United Methodist Church, and 140 different volunteers from 8 different churches and 2 synagogues. It is our duty to get out there and do new mission work, not just the same ministries we've done year after year, and be the hands and feet of Christ.
This video was brought to you by the people of the United Methodist Church through World Service donations.
So that's one of Daphne's very earliest videos. She has many, many more. You can find Daphne on YouTube if you just type her name in. She comes up all over the place. And if you need a little bit of inspiration someday, just do that. You'll feel better for sure. Next slide, please. So the coalition does a lot of our work through mini grants, and we fund respite community, faith communities, as well as organizations that want to develop or expand respite across the state. So this isn't this stat isn't from just faith communities, but it is through our mini grants. But 24,000 hours of respite provided between 2017 and 2021. We have 6 grants out there right now, one of which Daphne met them at the Respite Revival, which I'm going to talk about. And Kathleen, who works up in Jefferson County, put in for a mini grant, and she's partnering with 2 faith communities. And she has, Daphne went there to train her volunteers and train her on to train volunteers. And so it just keeps growing. And we just keep seeing more and more opportunity to connect and to build programs across the state. So we did fund one of the mini grants in Buffalo. So next slide, please. Okay, there we go. So this is key to the Respite Revival. So 10, 12 years ago, Lisa Rude, who is in one of my next slides, she worked for the Office for Aging, and she was a member of a local church in Buffalo. If you came to our Arch National Respite Conference in Buffalo, all these churches are in and around that area. She saw the need in her church, and she went to the county and said, I need a little bit of money to start this program. And they gave her $1,000. And from that program, these, I don't know how many are on here, 20, maybe 25 churches have grown over the years under Lisa's guidance. And I believe the county still gives $1,000 to any church in who's willing to open a respite program. But what is so amazing is that there are 20, 25 opportunities scheduled every week that caregivers can count on in that community and be able to drop off their loved one and take time for themselves, which is what it's all about. So next slide, please. So this is Lisa. As I say, she's the Buffalo mover and shaker. She was at the Respite Revival, and she was awestruck by Daphne. And Kevin on the right, who I think had a little crush on her, quite honest, was thrilled to bring her. And Kevin started the second respite program in the Buffalo area. And when I first came on as the coalition director, I went down and visited his program. And so when we had a little bit of money that we hadn't spent, because it's hard to spend money during COVID, I had this great idea about doing a respite revival. And part of it was that we had, we brought Daphne for a webinar to speak to all these people. We were trying to be supportive of all these programs as they were struggling through COVID and missing the people that were coming to their programs. And Arch came out with the guidance on reopening respite, and we shared that with all of them. And so Kevin, when I called Kevin and I said, I want to do a respite revival, I want to rent a tent, I want to put it up in Buffalo. And by the end of that day, Kevin had secured a church and hooked me up with the tent people, and we were on our way. And next slide. So this is it. We had 75 people show up in June last summer. We were so lucky to have a gorgeous day, and the governor had dropped the mask mandate the day before. It's back, but you know, then people felt more comfortable in taking off their masks. And Daphne shared an entire day of, you know, working with folks with dementia and how it relates to spirituality and how it relates to community service and how we all lift one another up. And it was just an inspiring event, and we all had such a great time. Next slide, please. This was her agenda. And as you can see, she really does focus on the spirituality, but the afternoon was her activity segment where you saw those pool noodles. She loves the pool noodles, Daphne does. And so we did that among all the other activities that she has put together over the years and shares with folks in her training as ways to really engage the folks beyond bingo, because that will drive Daphne crazy if you just do bingo at your program.
Yes.
Would I be right?
Yes, ma'am.
So with that, so this is just kind of an idea of how the day went for us. And next slide, please. This is us at the end of the day. We provided Daphne's book to everyone. She did a book signing, and her signature move at the end of any event is to everybody have their hands raised. So that's the signature picture. But as you can see, it was a great event where everybody was finally out of their houses and starting to get together and enjoy one another's company. But the beautiful thing was the whole excitement and rejuvenation around reopening the respites around that area. So we were so honored to have Daphne. And with that, I'm not going to take up any more of her time. I give you the founder of the Respite for All Foundation, Daphne Johnston.
Great. Gosh, that was some kind of intro.
There you go.
I tell Doris that anytime I have big groups together, I always make people raise their hands because it doubles the crowd. It shows the energy. And when you see somebody just standing like this, it's really boring. So I encourage you to always give them the jazz hands, and it makes all the difference. That picture also represents to me when we started our respite ministry 10 years ago. I had no idea that I was going to form a foundation a little more than 8 years later. But as I got to Winston-Salem, somehow to a marketing company, one of the board members had sent me to for the foundation board, all of us were trying to explain to the marketing executive, what we do and what we experience. And she just got really quiet and she said, "It sounds to me like you're reclaiming joy. You're reclaiming joy together." And that became the title of my book. That became our logo. She got it within a minute. She had no idea who we were. Those hands represent reclaiming joy. So I hope you'll carry it with that spirit. I can't believe Doris still had that agenda from the revival. And I do want to give a disclaimer because I think I can be as spiritual as somebody needs me to be, but I can keep my mouth shut, inspire the volunteers we've got, and somebody can feel the love of God. So we don't try to save anybody's soul. We don't try to do any evangelism, anything like that. This program is based off loving your neighbor. And I think the love just comes through. So Jill, have I got slides that I can move ahead? Jill, where'd she go?
I'm happy to advance them for you. I thought you wanted to share your own.
Oh, I do. Okay. I got you. I'm going to share this real quick. I hope. Jill, I might give it back to you. This is giving me a new menu that I haven't seen before. Can I give it to you?
Sure.
Okay.
1 second.
Thanks for having a backup. So I'm just going to fly through it, Jill, and I'll just say next, and you can speed zoom through.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, next. Well, let's go back to the other slide real quick. I'm really proud, before we even get going, this volunteer movement, really, we were really excited to turn in our first grant to the Alzheimer's Foundation this year, and we won on the first try. So we were named the Broad Sky Innovation Award winner, and with that came a $25,000 grant that is helping us put together a film training, how to start a respite on the faith-based volunteer model. I'll actually be shooting that next week. So hopefully in the spring, we will have close to a 7 or 8 hour video training that people can purchase if you're in New York, if you're in Kansas City. If somehow you can't get to Montgomery, Alabama, our mindset and how we train volunteers and recruit, the techniques we use, it'll all be in the video training, but that grant went to help us replicate. So next. I'm just going to burn through this. I just started in long-term care, did it 15 years, so I know what facility assisted living, memory care looks like. And I think what drives me so hard in the church-based and the faith-based arena is I remember the days of one assisted living activity director with 15 to 22 residents sitting around her, maybe one CNA that was pulled off the floor from vacuuming somebody's room, and that was it. And I felt so delivered that I was able to retire from long-term care in my 30s to start this ministry, because I see the power of volunteers and I see the power of having one-on-one. People just can't believe that we can attract that many volunteers to a respite ministry. And it's not just my personality. I know I'm a firecracker, but it's not me. It's the spirit of neighbor helping neighbor and us giving those volunteers the right way to look at Alzheimer's and dementia. So now I've been doing this 10 years, and our local program here in Montgomery has logged over 100,000 hours of volunteer time with 2 employees. Our church finance office handles our tuition checks. We charge $40 a month or $40 a day for our participants. They pay $10 an hour with a hot lunch from 10 to 2. But in 10 years, 4 days a week, 15 participants to 25 participants a day, we have logged an amazing almost 100,000 hours. Next. So our faith-based model is truly built on the care partner, the person with dementia, and the volunteers. And I firmly believe that it's all 3 evenly, because our volunteers are baby boomers who are truly searching for purpose. You know, you can't play golf and tennis for the next 25 years. How are directors and clergy or program directors, how are they recruiting people to give them an opportunity to find somewhere that actually has meaning and purpose, right? We started for the caregiver. We wanted to start a respite so they would be able to take a break, right? But the story goes, poor Doris has heard this story about 57 times, but the signature story, and it explains it all, is a story about our friends Jack and Mary. Jack had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. He was about 6'2", could not verbally communicate. He had the Parkinson tremors. Mary was just a broken down caregiver that just hovered over him all the time. And she would not leave Jack that first month. He was one of our first participants 10 years ago. And she just fretted over him. And finally, after about 2 weeks, one of my volunteers said, Mary, you have got to go. We've got this. We've got this. And Mary just kind of shook her head, and she went up to Jack, and she just, he has not spoken the whole month, but she hovered over him and she said, Jack, I love you. I love you, my love. I'm not deserting you. I'll be back at 2:00. It's just a couple of hours. I'm going to be back. I'm going to be back, Jack. I love you. I love you. And it was so heartbreaking to watch her. And with that, Jack turned to look at her and wave. And Jack spoke the first words he had spoken all month. And he said, goodbye. And we all just died laughing because we didn't even know he could talk. But in that very moment, I realized he needed a respite from her. I think so much of our attention is focused on the caregiver, and as it should be. What I like to point out to family members is, did you ever think that he needed a break from you? Even in our regular married lives, even if we're single, with dear friends that we live with, or whomever, our family around us, we all need a break, right? And once we could help caregivers recognize that, we really ended up with a lot more participants because they didn't feel guilt. They recognized that their people needed a break. So that's how we came to Respite for All for the foundation. The volunteers need a break from monotony. People with dementia need a break from a strung out caregiver, and a caregiver needs a break from 24/7 responsibility. Next. Our mission is to inspire, incubate, and support new communities. I was telling Jill, I think one thing that sets us apart from a foundation trying to replicate respites across the country, we don't have any set rules. I don't have any black and white franchise buy-in to A, B, C, D, E. Our method is to give you our best practices, our shared practices over the past 10 years. We've now helped to start 20 programs. We've got 3 new ones popping up. And as I told Jill and Doris, we just had a second faith-based respite conference here in Montgomery, and I had 70 come from across the country. And the key thing is we want to share our best practices. And let's say Kevin in New York, he gets really fired up and he thinks he can do that. I want Kevin to adjust our model to his local leadership. I think, being in the church, I know you need flexibility. And so we're not married to any black and white set of rules. We want to inspire you, help you along, set you free, and be there to support you year after year. Next. This is the new Respite for All video that we just had made for the foundation. And Jill, if you'll click one more time, you'll get a play. Doris, I didn't know you were playing this, but this is the overall foundation video that I would love for y'all to share.
I was an assisted living administrator, and I did that straight out of grad school. Did it for 15 years. Got the call from the local minister here to start the respite ministry, and there were 3 respites all over the Southeast, and I went to visit all 3 of those. I pulled what I thought would work for our program, and I knew that we did not want to be full of empty activities. We wanted to pack our days with service projects, with relationships, with just opportunity where our friends living with dementia could truly still make a difference. The Respite for All Foundation was founded by a care partner, Warren Barrow, and myself, because Warren lived this life.
My involvement with respite began when I went through what I considered to be a family tragedy. And ultimately I lost my wife, but I saw what they gave to her, and it meant everything to me.
Respite provides relief, purpose, meaning, and it provides hope. It's real hope for families living with Alzheimer's and dementia.
The place of a caregiver can be a pretty lonely and challenging place, and to have a community of people that are oriented around the person and not the disease is a tremendous gift of love for the caregiver.
I am a caregiver, and I bring my husband to the program for enrichment. When I first brought him, I would come in. Now I just stop the car, and he gets out and he's gone. Usually doesn't even say bye. They do things with him that I cannot do at home. When he comes here, he gets to sing. He gets to visit with the volunteers who are fantastic. They love him, and he loves them, and it's very evident that the volunteers are the key.
It's the volunteers that provide the relationships. You can't find the genuine love of these relationships in any other program, ministry, and we set them up to make a difference.
There's probably not a single other place to volunteer that you would get more personal joy out of. You know, we come to give joy and help somebody else have a great day, help somebody else feel valued and important, and you get so much more.
Every day when I finish, I just walk away with the most wonderful feeling.
We want everyone. We want black, white, gay, straight, Methodist, Baptist, Catholics. I had a call from Boise, Idaho last week where a Mormon church might want to even start it. It's places where you've got dedicated volunteers and free space to operate that makes all the difference.
Respite for All is simply reclaiming joy. That is what we do every day, is we reclaim joy through the love, the hugs, the sharing, the meaning. Everything that we do there is done with love.
This is a social model. There's no nurses needed, there's no meds passed. We have 4 hours of training, background checks on all volunteers. This is no different than a Bible study in a fellowship hall for 4 hours. This is neighbor helping neighbor. This foundation has helped start 20 programs across the country, and we're aiming to have one in every town. The respite model is just a new type of charity. It's a charity of spirit. It is, what have I got to better my community, to better my friends?
Thank you. We can move on. So, a word to the wise, do not try to shoot your one and only video over a span of COVID, because that took 6 months to film in 3 locations because of the COVID breaks and stops and masks. I love to show this slide because everything that we've built, 100,000 hours, 20 new programs, foundation, everything, Slide to the picture to the left. It started in the basement of a church, coffee stained carpets, no light in the windows, and 2 friends living with dementia. 14 volunteers. I don't even know where they came from. 2 people. So I always love to quote, "Do not despise small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices when the work begins." I had no idea what we were getting into, but people after people after people and resources, they were just put in our path, because I truly believe, we're not in it for the money. We're not in it for big state regulations. We're not in it for long-term care. There's so many people in our community that want to be able to help people with Alzheimer's and dementia, but they don't know how. And it's really hard when you send people out one by one in homes, and what a blessing it is for those families. But my goodness, how hard that is to recruit an army of volunteers to do that. And so when we found that people could work together, that retired teachers could come as a group, retired Sunday school classes, retired Kiwanians, retired Rotarians, people can come together as a group, and it's just like going to camp every day. It's awesome. Next slide. So from the basement of the church with no light comes all this joy. Next slide. Our unique angle. Next slide. I think the thing that sets us apart, in Alzheimer's, everybody loves to talk about art and music. And of course, we need to talk about art and music. Of course, those are premier things that we talk about when we think of dementia, things, therapy, things that will help. But I'm telling you, the love of these volunteers that we've recruited, it's the relationships. My goal before I retire in the next 30 years is to have art, music, and relationships. Those are the key factors that are going to keep our mind moving as we live and walk the road of Alzheimer's and dementia. But the thing that's so special to me about these relationships is they're reciprocal. It's not just the volunteer serving the person living with Alzheimer's. The nonverbal person with Alzheimer's that's lived in this community, 60, 70 years, they still have a chance to matter. They still have a chance to mean something to their community. And I love to share this story. I had a lady that had Lewy body, couldn't communicate at all. Doctor's wife, that husband died. She was in deep grief. She volunteered. The 2 of them became very close. Well, the doctor's wife called me about 6 months later in tears, and she said, "Daph," and she's just crying. And I knew something had happened to my friend Eileen, our friend at Respite. And she said, "Is it legal? Is it legal for me to have dinner with Eileen? They've called and invited me to Thanksgiving dinner because her children are coming in from California and New York." And I just thought, oh my goodness, what a signature story this can become. Because you see, in that very moment, Eileen, living with 10 years of Lewy body, hallucinations all the time, she had become the volunteer that was changing the life of our friend Bibi. Through her presence and her love, she had the opportunity to give back to her community, and that she did. Next slide. So this is something we love to tout. We've got 4 doors full of name tags just like this. And if you'll look closely, we don't have any last names on our name tags. One of our most favorite stories, and Doris has definitely heard this 72 times. We had a lady that came in, she was driving, she had dementia. She should not have been driving, but she stayed the day with us. We typically don't have drop-ins, but you know what? We took her anyway. She stayed with us, and at the end of the day, she just slapped her hand on the table and she said, "Damn, this is just better than AA." I hope y'all are chuckling at your desk because it was really funny. We were cracking up, and I said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And she said, "Look around the room, look around the room. Nobody cares what your last name is. And you're all just here meeting us where we are." Wow, how powerful is that? How powerful is that? Nobody cares what your last name is. And it's so true. We just love each other so much, and we just look forward to being together. And that's how you recruit volunteers, right? They come when they feel the love. Next slide. you'll just notice, and like through all the videos, there's no green smocks for volunteers. There's no different colored name tags. There's nothing that's going to make us stand apart from our people, because we truly consider that everybody still has something to give. I love to say, we're all facing something, whether it be bankruptcy, spiritual bankruptcy, an adult child that's gone astray, single, grief, death. Life happens, right? And so why should we single out the people living with memory loss as the only people that need the help of a neighbor, right? So everybody has a role. Next slide. This is just a quick picture of flood kits that we did. We try so hard. Of course, we have games that hold our attention, make us laugh, have competition, but then again, we have service projects too. And I think we adopted this really early on in the game. I think this kind of theory is spread across the country, but we need to be able to create opportunity for those leaders, for those people that have built our communities. How are we creating an opportunity for them to still give back? This particular day, we packed 200 flood kits to send to Houston, Texas, and we all went out of there sky high. How are we creating opportunity? And that's just another way to draw the volunteers, because it's just full of so much meaning. Next slide, please. This was a day we packed about 200 bags of dog food and cat food for our local Meals on Wheels program. We did this for about 45 minutes and barked and howled like cats and dogs. And I just can't tell you the amount of joy we had. Now we do this 2 or 3 times a year. Next slide, please. Next. So typically, who does the faith-based model serve? As I said before, we meet from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Typically, new programs will either start 1 or 2 days a week. We highly recommend 2, so they can really get in the swing of things. But we serve people we have no nursing, no medical staff. We serve those that can handle their own restroom needs. Medicines are handled at home by the caregivers. They typically get their meds moved before 10 or after 2, so there's no responsibility on the staff. The next and last thing is they need to be able to eat on their own. Or not the last. They need to be able to be in a group setting, because as you guys know, if you work with dementia, if they've been isolated and at home for a very long time and they get thrown in a group of 20 or 25 people, it can be difficult sometimes. Not typically, but sometimes. But you do need to be able to eat on your own. So we've got a wide range of early onset, young and active people that can communicate, people that can't verbally communicate at all, but they're totally with us. There's just a wide range. Next slide, please. Our volunteer success. That's always the biggest question I get, is how do you get the volunteers? Well, let me tell you, if you go through the faith-based model, typically you've got a church home congregation, full of hundreds of people, if not thousands, with the bigger churches. But I grew up in a church where 50 people came to church every Sunday. You're already working with a pool of people that are service-minded, right? They're just eager to help. They just need an outlet to do it. So we give them the vision. And the first time that I had them come, I had 14 volunteers show up for my first training. After about 6 months, I had about 30. I was really proud of that 30, but for us to get to 3 days a week, and we were growing quickly, I knew we needed a lot more. And I looked at the 30 I had and I said, I want you to go find one person to bring to the next training. Each of you find one person not from this church. It's got to be somebody from the community that we don't know. And do you know, they did it? We went from 30 volunteers to 60 overnight. A third day was added because of that volunteer challenge. Those are the best practices that we like to share with new communities. Friends wind up loving it so much, they recruit their friends. But the key thing is, we want to grow a pool of volunteers to where I can honestly look at this man in this picture. This guy's name is Tom, and say, Tom, you don't have to commit to every week. You don't have to be here every Tuesday. You know, I want you in the pool of people. We've got so many that I know we're going to have plenty. And by the schedule, if for some strange reason we don't have enough volunteers, I will know how to finagle the families that are coming. If I need to get on the phone and round up more volunteers, but that's very rare. When you don't make people find their own replacements and you can give them a pool of people to work with, it becomes very flexible and very enticing. Next slide, please. This is one of my favorite slides. How are these programs sustainable, right? My long-term care background, I know how much it costs to operate a building, how much it is to pay for a building. So if you had a nonprofit respite out there, standalone by itself, oh my goodness, you'd have to charge an arm and a leg. You'd have to be on Medicare, Medicaid. You'd have to write crazy grants. I know of a few, and they're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But our bright idea was there are so many churches around the country, and some really not being used, sadly, on the weekends, but definitely they've got space during the week, right? You've got this great, beautiful space that's already been paid for. Utilities are typically in there as well. And so when you can put a community asset inside a local church, boost the church up in many different ways. It gives them a mission and a purpose, but you've also got a program that has no overhead. It is amazing. So, you know, we're working with a group out in Sonoma Valley right now that's got federal dollars. And as Doris said, Kathleen in New York, they have found a place to house these programs with mission-minded people. They don't have to pay to advertise to get volunteers, and they've got no overhead. I'm telling you, it's the wave of the future. We got 5 million living with dementia right now. By the time I'm 70, I'm 45 right now. By the time I'm 70, there'll be over 15 million people living with dementia. And we can't lock everybody up in memory care, right? We've got to find new ways to evolve the care that the community can give. Our insurance, just to give you an example, went up $500 the first year. I mean, insurance is minimal. You've got trained volunteers, background checks on them, but it's a social model. There's no meds passed. So that's another great pillar of the sustainability. Next slide, please. I love this quote. He's a great theologian. It's not the person with dementia that forgets themselves, but the community that forgets them. So we want to drive that message home to our volunteers, our congregations, anybody that I speak to. What are we doing for these families? You know, it's one thing to drop a casserole off once a month, or maybe give them a phone call. But what we find is these families are forgotten in their darkest days, right? Because people are embarrassed. They don't know how to deal with John, who's got hallucinations now. And so they just stop coming. So it's this group of volunteers that feel so dedicated and so called to love on their neighbor. And now we want to share it with the country. Next, please. This is an old slide. This is 16 of our communities. Now we're up to 20, and we've got 3 in the cooker. So we're moving along, and it's interdenominational. That first video came from the Methodist Church, but we've got Episcopal, Jewish services. We're working with several different organizations. It's the faith-based volunteer model that I want to emphasize that we want to share. Next, please. So we've got programs right now in these states. Next, please. And we would love to see them in these states. We've got national trainings being scheduled. As I said, the video training is coming up next week that I'll have, and the video crew has told me they think they'll have it done in a month. And we're going to offer that video training for under $1,000. We haven't set the price yet, but it'll be under $1,000. And the goal is for Kathleen in New York to have been trained by us. And if there's somebody in New Hampshire that can drive to New York and see the model, that'd be great. If there's somebody in Oregon that can drive to Washington, that'd be great. So we want to have regional places of training so people can easily access those. Next, please. This is my favorite. This is my girl. Her name is Hetty Sue, and she's been living with frontal lobe dementia for about, goodness, about 15 years now. I had her for 8, and she's now in a facility in Texas because there was no facility in the state of Alabama that could hold her. But my volunteers kept her coming to respite 4 days a week because we had the manpower, we had the knowledge, we had the training of how do we deal with somebody with a slightly different personality. You'll see she's got some bumps in her chest. Those were her 7 lipsticks that she carried in her bra every day to make sure that I had lipstick. She wanted me to have color. Hetty Sue is really the light of my life. And in my book, I dedicate it to her because she truly changed the course of where my life was going. It's differences in people that we come along that are not like us, that might be vulnerable. And so how do we share that message with the community? How do we share it with congregations? How do we share it with civic groups? It's all about how we frame it, right? This is not the long haul of a nursing home. That's what people think when you hear Alzheimer's and dementia. This is joy. This is service projects. This is art, meaning, and hope. Next, please. So I like to end on this. Lewis and Clark, we know were the great explorers headed out west. And do you know that when they finally crossed over, they thought they were headed to the ocean past California, but they had just really made it to the Rocky Mountains. They had brought all of their supplies, canoes, because they thought they were going to canoe to the ocean, right? I am totally condensing this just for you guys. This is really a 15-minute story. But the moral of the story is they brought canoes and they brought all this equipment for the totally different terrain. They saw the Rocky Mountains and they had to leave everything behind. They had to adapt. They had to adjust to their environment. And I love to use this example because I really think that's how the country is going to have to be with Alzheimer's and dementia. It's not building new brick and mortar memory care units on every corner and charging $7,000 to $10,000 a month. Who can do that, right? I'm telling you, if we can find a model of volunteer care that's got sustainability, that's got purpose, I'm telling you, we're going to change the world. Next slide. I show this slide because I started this 10 years ago, and little did I know that my mother in this blue shirt would become one of my best volunteers. She gets the lunches out every Thursday, 50 lunches for us now every Thursday, and she loves respite. But little did we know that she would look over at me this summer and say, "Daph, I can't remember how to get to the interstate." So my mother is now living with us, and she'll be a great volunteer until the day she dies. It's now become personal. You know, I started this for a lot of other people, but now it's in my family. So I want to be able to give hope to everybody, and I want us to be able to share it. So I hope you guys have got some good questions. Just know that we're here to support anybody, give you great ideas, resources, anything we can. Jill, I think that's all I've got. That's about the speediest version I have ever done, right, Doris?
Well, that was a fantastic presentation, both of you. Thank you so much. I'm more than happy to open this up to questions. And those of you who are out there, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask the question if you're more comfortable putting it in the chat. But we'd love to hear your voice as well.
Well, I will just say, as Daphne pointed out, I have heard her speak many, many times, and I am inspired every time that I hear her speak. So thanks again, girl.
Love you, girl.
Anyone have any questions?
Guys, before I forget, I want to do a shout out for our website. It's www.respiteforall.org. And one of those drop-down boxes, I can't remember, there's a video gallery that's got all of our videos. The RFA, that's what we say, Respite for All. The RFA video is on the front. The training, the video training I talked about that we'll shoot next week, hopefully will be on this spring. And you can email me anytime if you've got any questions. Shirley, there's one question.
Hey, it's Brian with TRC in Tennessee. I just want to say thank you. You gave me a lot of insight. I'm the outreach coordinator here, and I'm just thankful for your time. And
Great.
yes, I just want to give you some good feedback because I learned some things, not even about my job, but about a colleague of mine. I'm going to give him some pointers about volunteer because he's having a hard time just finding new volunteers in the Tennessee area, in the Sumner County area. So
Yeah.
I love your insight. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, tell him to really look at the, I did not work in the church. I did, as I said, long-term care for so long, but good gracious, there's just buckets of people that want to help. And so if I was a nonprofit, not even church related, I would start by looking at some of those local churches because there's just pools of people that want to help.
So true.
Thank you for that feedback.
I have a question, Daphne. You're talking about this training video. I'm assuming that's a video to engage other faith communities to start programs. It's not training for the respite volunteer, is it?
Well, as a matter of fact, we're going to do it in 4 segments. So the first 3 are dedicated to how do we start a new respite ministry, or how do we start a new respite program? Choose your words, whatever you need. But I wanted to give the overview. It's a little more detailed than what I just gave you there. But my purpose was I've had so many people fly to Montgomery and they'll send their future director that might be a retired teachers. We found they are great directors, but they might send their 1 or 2 people. 2 people is great, just because of cost and time. But my thought was if I had this video training that's going to be really well done because we had a huge grant to do it, that a team of people back in New York and a team of people in Tennessee and a team of people that had marketing background or the church leadership or volunteer recruiting, that a team of people could see that. So we'll have how to organize with a local church, some ideas that would help them partner and make things smooth, how to do some marketing, how to do recruiting. We're also going to have a segment of the top 5 most diagnosed dementias: Lewy body, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, vascular. I'm missing the 5th, but we'll have one segment of that for new directors to understand how to apply that to their participants. And then we're going to have a 3.5-hour volunteer training. So it's basically me coaching Kevin in New York how to train his volunteers. So there will be a volunteer training segment in it. That was a good question.
This is Cassandra Furman. I'm with Arch, and I just noticed a question that was put in the chat, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't missed.
Okay.
Can you do respite for medically fragile people who need meds and use nurses? Can you use retired nurses?
I just think we've got to stick to what we know best, and this is just not everybody's cup of tea, but we've just got to stick to this. Another challenge that we faced is people ask if we have transportation, and we don't. It's strictly from 10 to 2, and that makes it hard for a lot of families, I know. But the more I wrap my head around, if we had transportation, I would have to train a dementia bus driver, I would have to get the cars, I would have to get insurance, and it would totally blow my low-cost sustainability model, right? So most of our clients pay $40 a day, as I said, but 1/3 of our local ones here, nobody is turned away. And I know that's why it grows. We just say we have plenty of resources, fine, and we just carry on.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And I see another question here, and I hope you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead. I like your background.
But what adaptation happened during COVID? Can you talk about that?
Oh, let me tell you a story about how we adapted through COVID. My volunteers, all the volunteers, we've probably got about 700 active in the network right now. We did monthly parades where our participants, when we closed, I had 75 here in Montgomery, 75 active families in our program in Montgomery. And I had about probably 60 or 70 volunteers, 50 of them stayed active. But we had picnics and concerts and drive-by dress-up parades and all the things like that. But then we divided the volunteers with our participant families. We did birthday singings in the yard, singing in the rain with umbrellas in the yard. We did it all. We stayed fully connected. And here in Montgomery, I had a volunteer that cooked 2,800 meals with the help of 20 volunteers a week. We called them the chefettes, and 20 love drivers, and they delivered the meals, but we cooked and delivered 2,800 meals at no cost. Donations covered all of it. I just, just do the right thing. It all comes back. It all comes back.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm Lori. I have a question.
Sure.
Great presentation. Really wonderful, wonderful program. Thank you for sharing. In the video with the, and I think it's a question I think I know the answer to, but the volunteer training, that'll be focused on those 5 areas, working with people with those 5 diagnoses that you talked about.
Working basically with them, but we mix a lot of Montessori dementia principles in. Has anybody heard of those? Dr. Cameron Camp? It's really realistic things. He's amazing. And we mix Montessori dementia in. We mix some Teepa Snow. If anybody's familiar with dementia training, she's great. We've got a little bit of that and brain science for a little bit, but it's really communication techniques with our friends with dementia.
In terms of, just training volunteers, communication techniques with people with dementia is definitely a skill set, but communication training for any volunteer could be helpful. So do you think some people could maybe extrapolate from it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely. Really everything that we train for dementia, we all need to know these skills. Don't interrupt, get on the eye level, slow your pace down, don't use so many words, go with the flow. And really what I love to pound home to my volunteers is, who cares if you're ever right again? Why do we make such a big deal about correcting? We just go through scenarios like that and do a lot of role play. I think my folks get a lot out of it.
That's what I was thinking. It's such an impressive program. I was thinking there was probably a larger picture to the training.
Well, you know what? It's really not. And I think that's my mentor. I didn't start the faith-based model. It's all been out there. I think my big idea was to connect us all and help to start more. But her volunteer training was about 8 hours, and it was really tedious, and it was hard for me to sit through. And I thought, you know what? It just doesn't have to be this complicated. We just need to know the basics and get in there and apply it and see what we do. And, the more we simplify, the better off, the more we attract it. We don't have to know all the synapses and brain science and all that good stuff. We know about 15 minutes of it, but we just learn how to help our neighbor,
Don't talk over, don't talk down.
That's right.
Kiss on the eye.
That's right.
Be patient.
And one of the greatest things that we train on is really sharing our gratitude. I'll never forget some conference, I can't remember where it was, but a lady that was speaking, she said, can you imagine waking up one morning and never hearing the words, thank you, ever again? Ever again. And so in our training, it's like, how do we build up how we can thank our friends? How do we do that genuinely? How do we do that? Because a lot of us are not, Southerners are a little bit better maybe than the rest of the country, but how do we do that naturally? And, it's all through the day. George, I really appreciate you helping me with Bill. He doesn't really have a lot of family, and I'm so thankful you're here today. Thank you. How do we build that into our conversation, right?
Daphne, I have another question.
Okay.
You were starting to tell me before we went live that you were collecting data, and this might be of particular interest to some of our grantees.
Okay.
And coalitions who are all about data collection so that they can engage in.
Well, I know Dina and Horace are. Thank you for that. Yes, so I've shared with Doris over the years that I can only do so much, and data collection was not in my background, but I've got to get it in my background because I know for us to grow and multiply like I want us to, I've got to have it. So this past year, we partnered with Dr. Stephen Sabat. He's written several Alzheimer's books from Georgetown. He's a psychology teacher there for 40 years. And so we've got hopefully a paper being published soon. He's been working on it for almost a year now with our data, but we do have our first set of questions that all 20 of our programs will be implementing over this spring. So we'll be setting our measuring dates and all of those kinds of things. But you know what? I wanted to find a way to measure differently. I wanted to find a way to measure what the volunteer programs provide as opposed to just a babysitting service, because we are not a babysitting service. And it's really, you know, respite almost is the wrong word. It's like they're really coming to our group to belong. They're really coming to our group to find purpose. So how are we capturing in our questions? You know, have you found joy as a caregiver, being a part of a dementia-friendly community? Have you, I don't know, I can't remember everything off the top of my head, but we are in that process. Thank you, Jim.
Very eager to see that. Anyone else have questions? I see some people turning their cameras on.
I have a comment, not necessarily a question. I'm Robin Boswell in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And I loved your presentation, Daphne. I just wanted to mention that faith communities can also be utilized in children's respite. And we have been doing that in Oklahoma for 10 years and utilizing churches, church volunteers, and the facilities to do respite. And then we also combine the sibling support at the same time.
Wonderful.
So it really can be applied using faith communities for children as well.
I have often thought the same thing. It just takes a caregiver that's fired up, that's mad as hell because their person's getting left out, or it takes a fired up Doris Green fighting for the whole state. It just takes, it takes an advocate to get it going. And then people say, God, it's not that hard. We could do that. And then how do we shape our message to attract volunteers instead of just begging and pleading and, just paying huge dollars to market to get them? How do we inspire them that we have to cut them back? How do we get them there?
Right.
We do have one question in the chat, Daphne, and our Colorado Coalition would like to know how much will you charge for the program?
For the daily program for participants or for the foundation to help start?
Megan, do you want to unmute yourself and maybe?
Yeah, I was wondering for how to start the foundation.
Oh, okay. Well, just to start a program through the foundation.
Right.
The video training, like I said, is going to be under $1,000.
Okay.
It'll be packed and it'll have everything. My hope is that people will get fired up around the video training.
Mm-hmm.
I think of my assistant. She's a retired kindergarten teacher. She knew nothing about Alzheimer's before she came to the program, but her personality was great. But she needed a team of people around her to understand the business and the marketing and how to organize with the church and how to recruit, all those good things.
Right.
So we want to send the video stuff out, and then we'll have an annual conference here in Montgomery where people can come 3 days once a year. So yesterday we closed it down, but we had marketing and nonprofit, art therapy and dementia. I want to cover everything that I want to help you guys. So there's no big cost.
Okay.
To, if you found a church in Colorado Springs.
Right. So then we would come as the coalition I would come down there and train them through the videos and with the or
Correct. That's right.
yes. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
And
Okay.
if you found any of them,
Uh-huh.
best thing to do is find a way to get them to Montgomery and just see it.
Right.
Once you walk in,
yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Thank
exactly
you.
Right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Do you also have a manual or something?
I do. I was just thinking, she just reminded me. So this is the book that I wrote that came out in the middle of COVID. I had no idea I was going to write a book, and I sure didn't know it was finally going to be completed in COVID. But this has got a lot of my stories and essays, because I really believe that the training that we do is best absorbed by the volunteers through stories and not just, hardcore bullet points, right? So there's some short essays in here explaining why we do what we do. And then at the end, there's a good step-by-step of what we're looking for in a respite roadmap. You're looking for a location. You're looking for a food source for lunch. You're looking for a 1 to 2 day a week part-time director that can get everything coordinated. You're just looking really for a church that's got a mission-minded outreach. What's so good to tell churches is, man, you guys have got an older population. There's some younger churches, but a lot of them are older. And everybody's going to need this ministry at some point, whether you be a retired volunteer that needs purpose, or whether you have got a family member living with dementia. So it's not a hard sell.
You mentioned, Daphne, that you had recently been successful with a generous grant award, and I'm wondering if you'll be able to use that to help some of these programs absorb the costs of what you might charge to expand the service.
Good question. Well, I'm just here to tell you that I got a $50,000 grant from a family foundation in California, but all of it is going to the video training. The film crew that we hired has got 3 cameras coming in and dollies and this, that, and the other. So that money got absorbed by the whole video training program. But there are some instances where we have given some seed grants. There's not a process yet, but there's some instances. Nothing official yet. I'm really sorry if y'all can hear all the lawn equipment in the background.
We can't really hear I can't really hear much of it.
Good. Okay.
Any other questions?
I had a quick question. Hi, I'm Tina, and I'm from the Illinois Respite Coalition. And like everybody else, what a wonderful, motivating presentation. So thank you very much. What would you say is the cost to do the program? So I know you just brought up like a part-time person, but if you're talking about, the food and the insurance.
Right. All right. So let's go through it just quickly. If you get a free place to be, if you look on our website right now, okay, respiteforall.org, there's something on there called a respite roadmap. And it's got steps 1, 2, 3. It's real simple that you can follow, and you can kind of jot in your prices. But your main cost is however you decide to do the director. Because if you've got a free place to be, you could have a $25,000 director. I was hired at $35,000 to do 3 days a week, and then I steadily increased. You could have a volunteer director that said, you know what, I'm going to do this 1 day a week for free. So it's very difficult for me to tell you need 25,000 or you need 50, because it's really based on the local talent that you have. Does that make sense? The way we do the food, my church here has, we have a kitchen that cooks for the daycare. So they charge me $7 a head. My Birmingham programs, they have personal caterers because their kitchen couldn't handle it. And so they pay them $7 to $10 a head. There's some programs that use the Meals on Wheels service. There's some programs that depend on local people to sponsor a lunch once a week. That's very doable, but it's very time consuming for whoever the director would be. But it's just hard to say, the best, most economical program I have There's one lady in South Alabama that is in the middle of the countryside, right? Tiny little town called Demopolis. And she's a retired hospice nurse. I think she was paid like $19 an hour. I think her salary is like $21,000. It's not salary, but she's paid by the hour to do 1 day a week. And so the best story there, through our training, I always tell the directors, you've got to volunteer up. You've got to find a way to make 8 volunteers feel like they're needed when you only have 3 friends. Because at the beginning, it's hard to attract people because they don't know what it is, right? So you've got 3 Alzheimer's friends, 7 or 8 volunteers, because you need a party. You just can't have 3 looking at 3 for 4 hours, right? So how do we volunteer up? We volunteer up. So this lady in Demopolis, she called me about 3 months later when we were checking in, and her name just happens to be Bambi, but she was really fun, real good. I said, Bambi, what's your volunteer ratio right now? Are you still volunteering up? Because they had just added like 6 new friends on top of the 3. So they had 9 friends in 3 months. It was amazing. And she said, well, I've got about 26. And I said, 26 in the pool? And she said, no, 26 coming every Thursday. I just can't get anybody to go home. It's all in the director's mindset. If we're not here just to babysit the people with dementia, we're here as a group to learn and get better and help our neighbor. So she had created just a small community asset, and the church was all behind it.
Well, since you're all for the most part, lifespan respite folks, we support the faith communities in New York through the mini grants. My friend Dean is pushing me to talk about it right now. So,
Get her, girl.
So there is at least in New York, or you could offer mini grants through your lifespan respite dollars to be able to support faith communities or organizations to start those churches, to start those programs. And I will tell you the picture that I showed you of Kevin. Kevin has been volunteering his time and running that respite program for almost 12 years. So like Daphne said, it is up to your local talent and the people around in your community who can really take that on and be fired up and passionate about it.
I was really amazed by that whole network because it was so educational for me. All we know down here is to do it once or twice a week. And I had never seen or imagined that somebody could put together 20 or 30 one day a month. When you just hear once a month, to me, it's once a month and it's hard for them to remember to the next month. And you get them so fired up that one day, and then we got to wait 30 days to go back. But the way Lisa inspired that to have different locations where they could go and based on a volunteer model was brilliant, I thought. When you don't have a whole lot of resources, she really made something happen. But if you've got just a little bit of resources in my training, I've got several slides of, how much revenue you would make at 10 friends paying $40 a day. 15 friends paying $40 a day or $30 a day, just depending on where you are. So when you actually have revenue coming back, it's very attractive for the church as well. Kind of like a daycare model, a lot cheaper, but not the headache of a daycare model because we don't have any state regs. That's what's really enticing.
One more question in the chat. Someone wanted to have a little bit more information about your upcoming conference, but I know your conference just passed. But
well, you know what? It just passed. I'm so glad somebody just asked that because I want to see. I'm going to try to share my screen one more time. I was going to try to show y'all a picture from it because y'all will just not believe. It was so good. Let's see. It's just not going to let me do it. Jill, I'm so glad you have my slides. Anyway, whoever asked that,
you want me to go back to a particular slide? Is it on your slides?
No, it's not. I had just dropped it on my desktop on my laptop, and I just can't get it to share for some reason. But anyway, if you'll continue to watch the respiteforall.org, we finally just got a MailChimp email footer at the bottom of it, I think, where you can put your email address in and get our news and updates. We're going to have the conference training that we just had that's got the marketing, movement matters, art therapy. We've got a wonderful speaker on starting caregiver support groups. She is fabulous. And then we've got 2 or 3 speakers that all they've got are art and service projects for dementia groups. It is a jammed up training. And so we paid about $5,000 to have all of that filmed, and we're going to upload that to the Respite for All website. And hopefully that'll be, I would say, in the next month. And we're going to charge $300 for that 8-hour training that you can upload offline. But you can take a look at the schedule of all the things there.
Doris did put a link to the foundation's website in the chat.
Great.
For those of you who are.
But I encourage you to get on that MailChimp. I'm not going to flood you with emails because I do not have time to write a ton of emails. But get on there so you can just get the updates in the news when the trainings come out. And if anybody ever wants to come down to Montgomery or fly into Birmingham, it's a little bit easier. There's 4 programs there. It's just amazing. It's, you know, what you don't know, once you walk in and once you know, you feel called to do it.
I want to thank you really for a wonderful presentation, Daphne. And thank you, Doris, for sharing Daphne with us and your Respite Revival. I do want to leave just the last 10 minutes or so for our Learning Collaborative members. If you all have any updates you want to share about your own programs or services, we can dedicate the last few minutes for that if you have anything you want to report. If you do, please feel free to just unmute yourselves, especially if you're running a faith-based program and would like to share a little bit about how your volunteer faith-based program works. We'd love to hear about it or what you're thinking about doing. No one has anything to share. I find that really hard to believe.
I took all the air out of the room. I talked too much. I'm sorry, Jill.
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure they have the opportunity to share as well. I know Breanne did a little bit from Tennessee, so thank you for that.
Well, I was sharing with Jill and Daphne before we went live that I was put in contact with a pastor today in Rochester who's got a collaborative of churches in the area who are looking for mission kind focus things. And I was sitting here thinking, Daphne, before I meet with him next week, I'm just going to email him your Respite for All Foundation video, because I think that sums it up so nicely. But you know, wherever you are, ask if there's people who are interested in, or if you know people in a faith community who are interested in doing some kind of mission work in the community. And you never know until you ask. You never know.
And use our videos, because people, yeah, I'm telling you, they just think of a nursing home, and it's just not the case.
Is there anyone out there who's attempting to connect with the faith community and facing any challenges?
Oh, good question.
Because we have heard about those in the past as well.
I'm sure.
I feel like before, I'm new to TRC, I'm 4-6 months in. I'm the outreach coordinator here, and I wish my volunteer director was here because he was having challenges connecting with the faith-based community. And he was saying he reached out by phone, and I told him I think it would probably be better if he was mailing. I don't know if that was good advice or not, but even possibly attending a church service and connecting, but he was saying he was having a hard time connecting with the pastors and trying to, you know, have a presence in their church. So if y'all have any insight, I'll pass it along. And yeah.
Well, I don't know where you are, but my advice, we're unmasked. Of course, I'm in Alabama, so I'm probably different than most of you guys, but we're unmasked. And I would say, he would need to call. There are adult seniors ministers, not the senior minister over the church, but the one that deals with 50 forward and older adults. And it's really hard to get in there on a phone call. If he could go by, flyers, they're just a few and far between. I would really recommend going by and having a laptop. And if your organization has got a quick video saying, oh, I'm begging you, Janice, just give me 5 seconds, 5 minutes to show you this clip of what's possible with my organization. That would get me.
How have you done it, Daphne? Have you had one? You've expanded to 22 churches. So how did you
Y'all
make
have at the beginning, just to get mine off the ground, I had a screen in the back of my car. I plugged my HD laptop in. I would speak at whatever side restaurant, old ladies club, had 98-year-olds with 4 people. I mean, I spoke to anybody I could, but I wanted to have a screen and a video to show them, right? Because mail outs, mine go in the trash. Emails, okay, but have you got something to like pull you in?
Awesome. Thank you for your
Those
insight.
personal communications really make a huge difference, personal connections.
As I've been listening to this, I'm thinking, I want to make an appointment with the bishop at my diocese in Spokane, and just because I've been wanting to do a respite summer camp for kids with disabilities. And we have a fabulous church camp that I've been a part of since I was a child. And I was thinking, I'm just going to contact the bishop and say, hey, let's have lunch.
Yeah, what a wonderful idea.
I've wanted to do this for years, and you've inspired me. So, I think a letter and email she might look at and send me a nice thank you note, but I think I'm going to buy you lunch and we're going to talk about this.
You just fight. Those bishops, they're busy, but you just stay tenacious and get in there and get that appointment. That's right. Yeah. I'm reminded, this is about the 30th time Doris has heard this one too, but that first time I came to New York, told my story, nobody had any clue what we did. I told it all, and a lady in the back of the room, she was just crying by the end of it, and she raised her hand, and I was like, ooh, she's crying, okay. And she said, you know what, I might not be able to do what you're doing, but I know it's happening. I know there's room for goodness to happen. And it's inspired me to take her avenue. It wasn't exactly what I'm doing, but we all just need to hear a good story. We need to know about vivacious things that are out there and that they can happen.
Wonderful. We're just about at the top of the hour. So I want to thank you again, Daphne and Doris, for a great presentation. I think you've inspired a lot of us.
Great.
If we've been trying to knock on our faith community's doors, we're going to try again now. So
great.
We're very grateful for that information. I do want to let all of you know, again, don't forget to apply for those innovative and exemplary respite service recognition, to submit your call for presentation, your proposal for a call for presentation for the National Lifespan Respite Conference. And there was a question in the chat about whether the recording of this will be available. It will be as soon as we get it uploaded to the website. I'll send a link to all of you for the recording, as well as for the slides that Doris and Daphne used today. You'll have access to copies of those slides as well. So again, thank you all so much for being here today and for participating in this event. And the Learning Collaborative will be meeting again in about 3 months, so check your calendars. And in the meantime, if you have questions about faith-based or volunteer respite, please send them forward to us. We're always eager to maintain the dialogue even between our collaborative meetings. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you both so much. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Jill. That was great.
Thank you, Daphne and Doris. It was really great. Appreciate it.
Y'all have a good day. See you, Dee.
Take care.